Hello, my friends. I'm your host, Samantha, and welcome to the Mooncast. Today, we are going to be talking about shadow work and light workers. But before we begin, I wanted to take a moment to remind you that on the summer solstice, I will be launching my very own membership program on buymeacoffee.com. And with that membership, you will not only be helping support this very Mooncast, but you will also have access to members-only videos where I will be going into the nitty-gritty of how I practice witchcraft. I'll be covering things such as sigil making, altar setups, spell crafting, how to organize and write in your own spell books, and so much more. So if you're interested in that, just follow the link below to buymeacoffee.com, and don't forget to follow me on social media like Facebook and Instagram so that you can get updates. So, moving on. I am not always calm. I've had many people tell me how calming and relaxing my podcasts are, and it makes me so incredibly happy that I can help bring a sense of peace to someone's life. But I'm not always calm, and I'm not always peaceful. Ask any of my closest friends or family members, and they will tell you that I do a fantastic impression of a pterodactyl. When I was preparing to launch my podcast, I made the choice for it to sound and look the way it does. Why? Well, because that is what I want to bring to the table. I fought the raging storm of aggression within me, of anger and sadness for a long time before I became who I am. Also, I chose this tone for my channel because, frankly, this is who I want to be. In a way, I suppose I'm creating a role model for myself. But by doing this podcast, I've been able to kind of explore who that person is and to make her, myself, a reality. I don't consider myself a light worker. Personally, I'm not a fan of the whole light and dark classification of both healers and witches. But I suppose we have to start somewhere. And I certainly do not, as controversial as it might be, believe there are white witches and black witches. Those two concepts alone open up an incredibly huge can of worms that I don't plan on digging into in this particular podcast. I tend to think that we all have a little bit of both. We're all somewhere on that spectrum of healing and harming, and it moves. We're not stationary on that spectrum. Now, admittedly, light workers get a bad rap and are often accused of spiritual bypassing or ignoring those valuable lessons that the shadow has to teach us. A good light worker will understand and even have experienced all that the shadow is and can offer us. The good light worker chooses. They make the conscious choice to follow and spread healing, or what is referred to commonly as light to humanity. Unfortunately, you cannot know someone's position on this without at least asking. As we all well know, it is incredibly unwise to assume. And it is a great disservice to ourselves to only see this lighter side, as well as it is to dwell in the darker areas of ourselves. The key is, as nature requires, a healthy balance. So, what is shadow work? Shadow work in a nutshell is working with your unconscious mind to find things that you've repressed or even hid from yourself. Those can be in the form of traumas or undesirable parts of your own personality. It is not the evil side, as some have suggested, but those hidden things you might not even be aware of lurking in the background, or the shadowy parts of ourselves. And you just can't have the light without the shadow. They draw contrast to one another, and I've encountered this in my own healing journey. In the last few years, we have lost a lot of family, whether to death or disownment. It was incredibly painful and traumatizing, to say the least. At the time, though, the proper thing seemed to be to warrior on, as these instances did not leave much time for grieving or reflection. Our bodies know when we've had enough. Our minds will shut down and stop us from experiencing too much at once. For me, this came as a numbness. I could neither feel joy nor pain. Occasionally, little bits of both broke through, but I regularly felt numb to my own existence. I am a member of a two-part team, my lover and myself, and we are quite adept at taking turns holding the weight, and the both of us were very tired of holding it, to say the least. I put those feelings off to the side intentionally, knowing it was temporary. I knew at that moment it was not the time to process them. I knew I would have to confront them eventually. It wasn't until the dust cleared and I felt safe that I could allow them to come through. One day, something triggered an emotional response in me. I felt the knot in my throat and my eyes start to sting. And as I had grown accustomed to doing, I held those things back for a moment. But then, I made a different decision. I decided to feel it. I was in a safe place, and finally let those emotions and tears flow. As I mourned, a new clarity came over me. Everything felt real and vibrant again. I no longer felt pain and grief, but gratitude for the experience and people. My feelings were transmuted, changed, and allowed to become what they needed to be. Sometimes we just don't feel safe enough to express ourselves, and waiting is okay. Some will just tell you to feel them as they come, but this is not always possible. But I'm here to tell you, no matter where you are in your journey, that it's okay to feel them. And I know it's scary. You know they're there, but you also know just how deep your pain goes, and even beginning to tread that path can be terrifying. But it's okay. It is. Because on the other side of darkness is the healing light. Every time I allowed myself to finally process those pains, I felt closer and closer to my own life. I am certain there is a psychologist somewhere who could tell me the exact terminology for all those things. I know this is nothing new, but for me, it is a spiritual experience, one that I can describe and pass on to you. To me, this is personal alchemy, changing one thing into another through temperance, knowledge, and patience. Without all that hard work, I wouldn't be who I am, and I wouldn't know what I know. And as I said, I don't consider myself a light worker, but I also don't dwell in the shadow. You can't study the darkness by flooding it with light, but all the darkness in the world cannot extinguish the light of a single candle. I know I may sound like a broken record, but the key is balance. The key is knowing yourself and knowing that those shadowy parts of yourself all have lessons to be learned. For example, if you feel anger, that anger can help you identify what is important to you, what you value. We feel anger because something we care about is being threatened. If we feel jealousy, it's not because we truly care that someone else has something that we don't. It's that we are afraid that we too cannot have the same thing. These feelings can be our greatest teachers if we just look past them a little bit. And in turn, by knowing these things, we can understand them in other people. We can understand why someone may act a way that they do. And that makes us better healers. And I feel that this is a more complex subject than I can wrap up in a 15-minute podcast. But I think you get the idea. You get the basics of what I'm trying to say. Going into oneself can be a scary thing. You might just find something that you don't like, and that's okay. Because as cliche as it might sound, knowing truly is half the battle. What's most important is that you can be honest with yourself, and you can be gentle with yourself, and that you can give yourself the space you need to grow, heal, and understand yourself. So, my friends, I suppose that is all for today. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I'll see you next week.